All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your patience while we got everything set up for our webinar today. I'm Megan Cohorst. I'm the Director of Communications and Outreach with Save the Manatee Club. And I am here with Gina McLean, who is Save the Manatee Club's volunteer specialist. Gina is going to be giving our presentation in just a few moments about Manatee 101 for everybody to learn all about manatees. So we're gonna get started probably in just a minute or so. But in the meantime, I wanted to let you all know just a few pieces of information before we get started. So the format of the webinar will be that Gina will kind of front load the presentation. We have a slideshow that she's going to present throughout the whole time. The only cameras that are able to be on are mine and Gina's. And you guys will all also remain muted. So if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. I see that William and Glory have already figured the chat out. That's great. So any questions you have now about manatees, anything that comes up over the course of the presentation, feel free to ask those in the chat. And we will either kind of see them on the fly, we can answer them then, or we'll go through and at the end of the presentation, we will do a Q&A session to go through those questions and answer them to the best of our ability. Feel free to share with us where you're watching from. We love to hear, where all of our manatee lovers live. I know not all of you are in Florida. So please let us know where you're at. And I think we may as well just go ahead and get started, Gina, since it's 6:05. So you can take it away if you want to introduce yourself or.
Trying to do. My screen is filling up with all the chats. There we go. So y'all should be able to see me and see the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Give us a thumbs up. Always still have people in the lobby.
Yeah. You can go ahead and get started. People will trickle in.
Okay. I have to figure out how to turn that off because my screen keeps jumping every time. Oh, sorry, I did not mean to do that. Okay. All right. Alrighty, so as Megan said, I'm quite excited to be here. My name is Gina McLean, and I have been in position as the volunteer specialist at Save the Manatee Club for about 6 months now. And that 6 months follows about 5 years of volunteering with Save the Manatee Club, and also as a Florida State Park volunteer, mainly at Blue Springs State Park. And so I'm very excited to present Manatee 101 on this fabulous Manatee Appreciation Day. I'm sure you have been appreciating and showing your love and support for manatees all day. And if you haven't been able to, well, now you have your chance, because we are here to pay homage to our fabulous and favorite marine mammal. And of course, that's our manatee. So I want to make sure that everyone is seeing the PowerPoint. So I'm going to just block my camera while we go through the PowerPoint. And then that way you're not distracted by me and you're paying attention to the most important thing, which are our manatees. So the Florida manatee. Again, I'm sure you probably are familiar with manatees. You're on a manatee webinar on Manatee Appreciation Day, but just in case you're not, you're going to learn a lot tonight, and we'll start out with the history of Save the Manatee Club. As you see that gorgeous picture of Jimmy Buffett, So we were founded by Jimmy, and our governor at the time in Florida was Bob Graham, and they created Save the Manatee Club with a very simple mission, and one that remains today, the guidepost by which we do everything, which is to protect manatees and their aquatic habitat, not only for today, but for future generations. And that sincerely is our guidepost to everything that we do here at Save the Manatee Club. And I will refer to us as SMC because it's a lot less letters. So as you may know or may not know, we do a ton of public awareness and education. Our outreach is far and wide. We support efforts across the Caribbean, in South America and West Africa. We, of course, advocate for our manatees in the US with legislation and legal action when it's appropriate and required. We do an incredible amount of fundraising and giving of grants for research, for rescue, for rehabilitation, and for release. And it's been my distinct pleasure to be able to join the team and help with that outreach and education. So what is a manatee? Frequently referred to as sea cows. The children seem to really love that. And there are, I guess some similarities. I can see where it came from, but you'll find out that, not really nothing like a cow, except that they're, herbivores. That's about it. So a manatee is what's called an aquatic mammal, obviously large and gray with a tail and two flippers. It is the only aquatic mammal that eats only plants. So that's really cool. And they are quite large, as you can see. When you don't have scale, it's hard to see. So if you compare it to a human, we average in the mid 5 foot range, if you're lucky, 6 foot. So on average, a manatee is 10 feet long, on average weighs between 8 to 1,200 pounds. So there are manatees on record that are bigger than cars, like over 3,000 pounds. So they can get quite large. And you'll know that when you're in the water with them ever, because it's just a big gray blob of love going by you. And here is kind of the history of manatees. They are in the class of sirenians. And you can kind of see on the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but the stellar sea cow on the bottom was really the only sirenian that was in cold water. It was discovered, I think it was in the 1600s, Megan, you may have to correct me, but
1714.
Pardon me?
1714.
1714. And I think my research showed that within 50 or 60
1741.
years,
Sorry. 1740.
Right?
It was discovered first in 1741, and within 27 years, it had been hunted into extinction.
Right. So, we as humans strike again, not realizing that if you kill everything, sometimes they don't come back. So that's why none of us have ever experienced a stellar sea cow. Again, it would have been fascinating to see a sirenian in cold water. You can actually see some of the similarities between the stellar sea cow and the dugong right above it, the forked tail. Their heads are quite different for sure, but the dugong is also different from a manatee with their head because they eat almost exclusively seagrass off of the bottom. They don't really do a lot of surface eating, and so they've evolved into being more downward facing. And they are the only sirenian still around that has that forked tail. And the dugong is found mainly in Asia and between Asia and Australia. And then, of course, we have over to the left, the Amazonian manatee, which by definition is in the Amazon River in South America. And then we have on the west coast of Africa, the West African manatee. And you see fabulously there in the inset is the West Indian manatee. And those are the ones we're going to talk about tonight. The Florida manatee is a subspecies of that West Indian manatee that used to be spread all over the Caribbean for many, 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 many years, thousands of years. possibly millions, I don't know. So let's talk about the closest living land mammal to manatees, and it's the elephant. And a lot of people get very excited by that because they never thought that could be the case. And if you actually just kind of think about it for a moment, you'll see there's a lot of similarities. A large gray body. Well, first of all, they're both mammals, obviously. So they're covered in hair or fur. Large gray bodies with eyes that are quite small compared to the size of their bodies. They have that in common. They both have hair. And then the most adorable part to me is the prehensile snout. And we don't have a pic of it, but if you think about the end of an elephant's trunk, it actually has, the end of that trunk has two little pieces that come out, and if you've been to a zoo or a circus, they might take something out of someone's hands with that. Well, that is exactly the lip and the snout that a manatee has. They have the prehensile lip. So that both parts of that can go out, grab vegetation, and pull it down into the manatee's mouth, which is super cool. And then, of course, the last thing, which is totes adorbs too, is their toes. So if you look on a manatee's flipper, they have 3 little fingernails. Looks very much like sort of the foot of an elephant, and probably is vestigial from when manatees were land dwellers. But they do use those flippers for quite a few things, and we'll get into that, I believe, maybe right now. No, in a minute. So our manatees in Florida, and what's left of the West Caribbean manatees, will always be found in pretty shallow, slow-moving bodies of water, and that is because that's where the food is. So that can be rivers, estuaries, certainly coastal areas. It doesn't really matter to them what kind of water they're in. A manatee can be in any mix of fresh or salt, and because they're breathing air. And but they will always be in pretty shallow water, not only for the temperature, but because that's where the good vegetation is, especially in the ocean. You won't find manatees deep in the ocean. First of all, it probably is too cold, depending on the ocean, and there may not be any seagrasses for them to eat in that area. So in Central Florida, certainly the lagoons that sort of bridge between rivers and springs and ocean are where you find the biggest collection of manatees, and really cool. And of course, I mentioned temperature. So manatees can't be at below 68 degrees Fahrenheit for long periods of time. And so in the winter, when our bodies of water, even here in sunny Florida, drop below that temperature, they have to find warm water refuges to spend the winter. So you'll see here the winter range are the dots, and that's basically Florida, the coastline of Florida up into the Panhandle. And then you'll see the summer range is the dots, the dashes, and they go really as far as I like. And I kind of like to compare manatees to people in that some like to travel and some don't. We have manatees that the minute the St. Johns River is warm, and they may have been wintering in the luscious warm waters of Blue Spring, the minute that river is warm, they take off and go live their best wild manatee life. A lot of them will travel the distance of the St. Johns with the river flow, which flows south to north, and then they will go out into the Atlantic up by Jacksonville. Some might take a left and go up into the Carolinas or as far north as New England. Some might take a right and come down into the Atlantic coast. Some might keep going, right? Go all the way around the tip of Florida to the Keys, and then up into the Gulf of Mexico. They might even go all the way across to Belize on the Yucatan Peninsula. They might go down to an island. And then the flip side of all those traveling manatees is that a lot of them we see throughout the year in the St. Johns River. And that is totally their choice, because you know, they have everything they need in the St. John's. They have a beautiful place to winter. They have tons of food. And I guess it suits their fancy to stay right there, quite a few of them. So let's see here. So what do they eat? And basically how I was trained was anything that's in or on the water or hanging in the water. And it can be quite exciting to see manatees lifting most of their head out of the water to latch onto a vine or some vegetation that's hanging down. Because you don't really see parts of manatees exposed very often besides those cute little nostrils. So they eat submerged plants, emergent, floating, seagrasses, plants, branches. One of the things about a manatee, and kind of if you think about this common sense wise, is if you don't have hands, right, you can't really pick things out of your food. So we'll talk about it more later when we talk about our human trash, but anything that's caught in that vegetation, especially in fresh water where you might have vegetation that's clumped together, they will eat and swallow whatever's in there. It could be little shells, little shellfish, or little snails, or tiny little fish, or maybe a spider, or whatever's caught in that vegetation. The manatees will eat it. So they don't spit it out. And so they are equal opportunity when it comes to eating vegetation. What I love too about manatees is that they're a very important part of the seagrass ecosystem because they trim the seagrass. They do not pull it out by the root. And so that's why it's so important that we have manatees with our seagrass, because they keep it mowed, I guess, for lack of a better term. And also in freshwater, they eat a lot of invasive plants like water hyacinth that can really bog up waterways and different parts of lakes and rivers. And so manatees eat it all, which is really exciting. And you'll also see that, as I mentioned before, they do not have blubber. So there's a very thin layer of fat. So they are not like seals or whales. And that's absolutely why they have to be on warm water. So I mentioned the hairs all over their bodies, and this is the most cute picture ever. So the tiny hairs all over the body of the manatee are called vibrissae, and there's 3,000 hairs on their body and then 2,000 hairs on their nose that we frequently call whiskers. And they use those whiskers on their face to inspect things. So again, when you're a mammal that doesn't have hands, what do you use to check things out? You use your face. So they use those whiskers to investigate and check out. It could be on another manatee's whiskers. I have seen manatees do that, and folks think they're, smooching. They're not. They're checking out the algae or the pieces of vegetation that are caught in the other's whiskers. And maybe there's some form of, where'd you get that? I don't know, that tastes really good. They also do it to many, many things in the water if they don't know what it is, because their eyesight is okay. But those whiskers really tell them everything that they need to know about their underwater environment. And I kind of like to think about all those hairs on their body telling them about temperature and depth and what's in the water. And again, their anatomy does not really allow them to turn and look behind them. So those hairs tell them a lot about what's going on in their underwater environment. And yes, they're super cute on their face. Yes, love it. All right, so the breathing. As I said before, most of the time what you see of a manatee is that cute little nose that comes up. Usually they breathe every 3 to 5 minutes, which when you're waiting to see a manatee will seem like an eternity, especially if you're in dark water that you can't see through, like the St. John's River. And so we've had many folks come to the St. John's to see manatees, and it's just luck and timing that you are there near the surface where they come up to breathe, because again, they are always moving and eating. So what's really cool about manatees is if you think about it, so they're in water, right? They're eating, they're moving along. They're eating, I mean, they need a lot of food, 10% of their body weight every day, right? In that vegetation. So it takes hours to do that. And then they get tired. So they just sink to the bottom of wherever they are and they go to sleep. And that resting manatee can hold its breath for about 20 minutes. And what the scientists have told us is there's a special part of their brain that remains active, and it brings the animal to the surface to take a breath without fully waking up that manatee. So I don't know about you, but I would love that some nights about 3 a.m. That would be very convenient to not have to wake me up. But back to the manatee. You know, they wake up from their nap, they continue swimming and eating, get tired, do that. And that is the life of a manatee. And they do that nonstop 24/7. They are not on any kind of a schedule like we are. All righty, so the mating herd. So this is always a very exciting event, and you will know when you've seen one because it's the only time manatees are very splashy. It's really the only time that you hear anything besides an exhalation from their nostrils. And that's because these manatee herds or mating herds are quite big. There can be between 9 and 12. Excuse me. Oh, we have some water. Between 9 and 12 males with a female that has gone into estrus or heat. And so the splashing is the dudes trying to get in position under her. I always like to tell visitors to the parks that it's very kid friendly. There's not any reaction like some mammals. Really, and it is not fighting. It is not any kind of aggressive behavior at all. Those males are jockeying for position to be underneath her while she's swimming and line up their business. It is super kid friendly, as I said, and basically all of those males will make a deposit. And a mating herd may happen 2 or 3 times with that female while she's in heat. And then they disperse. And 12 to 13 months later, we're not really sure because these are wild animals, she will have a calf. And that calf will be between 3 and 4 feet long, 60 to 70 pounds. Of course, it's a live birth, so that calf comes out swimming and exploring its environment and bonding with the female and with its mom. That time, especially in the first few months, is very, very important because the calves at that point are only nursing. And if it's in the winter, it may even extend that period of time where they can't learn to forage until they can go out with their female, with their mom, and be taught how to forage. And so when the water is too cold, they have to stay in the warm water refuge. So they'll learn that a little bit later. And there is no season for mating. It's just when each female goes into estrus. So, so that's the calf. So usually it's one at a time, but in nature, as you know, there are twins and they do happen. And, you know, also in nature, not both of the calves survive because that's just how nature is. But we have a very special experience that just happened at Blue Spring. We have a manatee known to us called Estelle, and she brought in a pair of twins. We don't know their gender yet, at least I don't, but both twins or both calves were doing terrific and both were with her and both looked terrific and doing fine, and they all left together. And so that is a great success story for twin manatees. So the other thing I wanted to kind of insert here is that, as I said before, the manatees can't really tell like what's behind them. They also can't tell who's nursing because the calves nurse from behind each flipper. It's kind of underneath and behind. And a manatee's anatomy doesn't allow them to turn and look underneath and say, oh, who's that? So the manatee females, especially if they've left their calves in a warm water place, they'll cross nurse off any other female. The calves will play while their mom goes out to eat. Like in our case in Blue Spring, they go out into the river. And so when the females come back in, they make a series of chirps, squirks, I just made up a word, squeaks and burps. And it calls the calves they're raising. And then as she swims in, they latch on behind each flipper, so 2 at a time can drink. And then they have synchronized eating happening the whole time that they're swimming around, which is really, really fun. We actually have, again, another really great thing that just happened on the 17th of the month. And we had Annie, one of our Save the Manatee adoptees. She had her 6th calf ever, and she had it in the head spring at Blue Spring State Park. And the calf is simply irresistible and has first time I've ever seen this, and I guess it's quite common, is because of the way they're folded during gestation. The tail on the calf is actually almost like curled. The edge of the tail is not hard and flat yet. It's almost like a little ribbon shape. Super adorable. The other thing that's happened with Annie is that she suddenly had a little bit of an older calf also with her. So it is quite common for subadult manatees to be around a lactating female because they drink for free. So I kind of imagine like maybe college age kids that have come back home because they are drinking for free. And sometimes they will push the calves that really need that milk out of the way. And so one of the things we're always looking for at Blue Spring is to make sure that her calf, first of all, gets enough nursing time. And now she has another calf with her as well. So as you see on the slide, there isn't a family structure to manatees, except when it comes to females and the calves they're raising. And Annie has seemed to take on what we think is an orphan calf. Calf has been with her since the beginning and is staying with her. And it's a lovely thing about female manatees. It really does take a village, because if they are, if they encounter an orphaned manatee calf, they will adopt it and foster it and raise it to until they wean it off, just like the others. We've even had manatees that we've seen that have 3 calves, all different sizes. One was theirs, the other 2 they adopted. So there are incredible, incredible moms. They're really terrific. And so the other thing about the time with the mom, as I said, they'll teach them the forage, but during their time together, they'll also show them warm water sites. Manatees do form memory. They absolutely return to sites. They also form a preference for different kinds of vegetation. So, oh, I'm sorry. I'll answer that question at the end. So they will show them where the good feeding grounds are, some sort of the routes that the moms take. It doesn't mean that those calves, once they're weaned, will follow those same sort of migratory routes. Again, they each follow their own nose, literally. So it's, I have people when I tell them this next statement that they get sad, and I don't want you to be sad because this is nature at her best. So when the female manatees wean the calves, they go their separate ways. There isn't data that shows us that they recognize each other again as a calf. And that's okay. This is how they are. They are quite solitary animals. So, when they are together by coincidence or for a purpose, like a large aggregation that is in a warm water refuge, they are certainly social. Some more than others. Some are more curious than others. Some are more playful than others. But they're all there in the winter, especially for the warm water. They're resting and sleeping and conserving their energy, because it takes a lot more energy to go out into that cold water to eat than it does to stay in the warm water and rest. And so like people like to think there are family units and the dads are involved and all of that, but that does not happen. And the moms are terrific and prepare their calves for their future lives, to be on their own. And whether it's a male or female, they'll start participating in mating herds. The males at about age, I think, 7, and the females at about age 5. And then you'll see that last line on the screen, it just breaks my heart. So when people are not involved, and manatees are just left to their fabulous selves, they can live to be 60 and even 70 years old. But the human threats that we represent shorten that lifespan considerably. So the challenges for the Florida manatee, I've covered a few, but let's talk about voting and the legislation that is in place since really the 70s, even before we were here at Save the Manatee Club. And so you'll see all of those protection acts. And you know, I guess suffice to say, and what I tell people all the time, is that manatees are wild animals that are federally protected. There are rules of engagement. And the first one has to be that we follow the rules on the water. And that sign right there, manatee zone, slow speed, minimum wake. Some of them say no wake with a big red bar through it, meaning they have to be just kind of bobbing along in the water with the current. So let's see here. So, well, this actually says this 5733. So that is back in 2019. Unfortunately, we have had a couple of really hard years. We've lost about 2,000 manatees in the last 2 years, in 2021 and 2022, most of which were due to starvation in the Indian River Lagoon. And we will talk about that after we talk about boats. Well, you can see watercraft collisions. It's a big percentage, and this is a good time to talk about the difference between propeller scars, like what you see on this manatee right here, and boat strikes. So the reason speed is such a problem with manatees is that the blunt force trauma of the keel of a boat can kill a manatee instantly or leave them in a position where they don't have enough time for rescuers to get to them. It can break a rib, which can puncture a lung. The manatees absolutely need both lungs to be able to submerge, to eat, and come up to breathe. And so it is, the speed is the killer. And absolutely, boat strikes are the largest known cause of manatee deaths, for sure. You know, remember that manatee is swimming along, eating underneath the water, doing their manatee thing. They sink to the bottom, they breathe, they come, or they sleep. They come up to breathe. Remember, they're not fully awake. They don't know that a boat is coming. They may be in the process of coming up, going down, eating, doing whatever. This is their world, and suddenly this big hard thing hits them. So slowing boaters down is absolutely the name of the game. So I always have people ask me about propeller guards. So the propellers also obviously do a lot of damage. The majority of the time, the manatees can survive the propeller injuries depending on where the propeller cut them. There are some that don't survive that because it just was like, it might have nicked the spinal column, it might have nicked, you know, other things that that is just not survivable. But propeller guards would actually not help if boats continue to go as fast. Because then if you've put something around the propeller, now you've put an even larger blunt object. So if that boat is still speeding, say the front misses the manatee, and then that giant thing around the propeller hits the manatee and would probably kill it instantly. So when it comes to boaters, this is all about education and following the posted signs, and having someone on the front of your boat looking out for them. Oh, and I think I'm going all out of order in my slides. I apologize, but having someone on the front with polarized glasses, being a manatee spotter, is a key part of being a responsible boater. Of course, we want boaters to enjoy all the waterways and oceans and everything in Florida. But we have to remember, we're not the owners of these places. These manatees live in these areas. This is their world. And we are an uninvited guest, and we have to remember that we have to slow down. These are known manatee areas. That's why these signs are there, and we have to follow the posted limits. So the other challenges that happen, and I reference this quite a bit, is the cold stress. When they are in the water for long periods of time, that is below 68 degrees, they will get physical signs of cold stress. They also become quite lethargic, and they'll become emaciated because they don't have enough energy to forage. So if they don't have a warm water refuge, eventually the cold will kill them. Very topical right now is because we have a red tide happening in the Gulf of Mexico. This is a toxic algae that occurs naturally, but we do lots of things with pollution that makes it actually bloom. And this actually acts as a neurotoxin to manatees. And it makes them, it's like a neurological disorder. They can kind of swim sideways in circles, and it can actually cause them to drown because they are just not functioning properly as a manatee. And then that last note, and this comes up a lot, that people ask, where's the manatee in the food chain? And the answer is they aren't. There's nothing that preys upon a manatee. They have no natural predator, no alligators, no sharks, no nothing. And so they're in a very kind of rarefied position in that, because most creatures are part of a food chain somewhere, but they're not. And but there are many things that threaten them. And that's where human behaviors and human stuff comes into play when we talk about threats. And one of the biggest ones is trash. People that are fishing and not disposing of their fishing line or gear, or leaving hooks in the water, crab traps, the ropes. I mean, there is just, the list goes on and on. All of those things are just in our water and floating and become entangled with vegetation. As you can see that picture, I'm not sure which manatee that is, but that fishing line has become entangled all around the flipper. We actually have one of our adoptees, Margarito, as a calf, was entangled with fishing line, and it was so tight, it amputated his flipper. And, oh, that's Una. Okay, cool. But Margarito, it amputated his flipper, and he does just great. He's very manatee capable, mana capable, I don't know. And he does not swim in circles. He does just fine. But just the fact that he has to find ways to work around is just sad, because this could have been avoided if we all just disposed of, our fishing line and other trash as well. So I will tell you my personal experience at Blue Springs State Park, being in the kayak, and I spend a huge part of each volunteer shift along the shore and in any vegetation that's coming from the river and just floating from the spring out to the river, picking up people trash, juice box straws, tops of water bottles, whole water bottles, shoes. I mean, you name it, I have found it. Lighters, vapes. I mean, everything that somebody had in their pocket before they went swimming is now trash that a manatee could eat. And what can happen, and has happened many times, is that a manatee will ingest that. Of course, they cannot digest it, so they don't know that their stomach actually isn't full of nutrients and food. They will stop eating and can actually pass away from that. Also, we've had manatees that have so much fishing line throughout their entire digestive system that it has killed them. So, and we'll talk more about the pollution that will kill plants, so the seagrasses and other things that manatees eat. Oh, we're going to talk about it right here. So we are, you know, aquatic habitat loss is a huge threat, and I'm going to talk a lot about it with the Indian River Lagoon, which is the Atlantic side of Florida. It's a very long area that stretches about 156 miles, and that includes many municipalities and many different cities and counties. And you know, the one thing about Florida, when people move here, they really like a place on the water. And what a lot of folks don't understand is that if you had a native Florida lawn, you will never see bright green grass going right down to the water, because we are a state of sand. We don't even have dirt. So this is about you know, people having responsible landscaping practices, and also company development and factories putting all sorts of pollutants and things in the water that will cause algal blooms and make the water so murky, and the algae blooms also will block the sun so that the seagrass can't grow. So we have a huge push to preserve our natural springs in Central Florida. They're quite special, and we need to make sure that those springs all stay healthy, because as we are losing some of our aquatic habitat for manatees on the coast, on the East Coast, our springs are actually doing quite well. And so there are some steps that we need to take to make sure those springs are all accessible. So here we are in the unusual mortality event that is going on. And it says 2020, that's when the largest die-off of manatees have been. But this UME goes back about 10 to 12 years. And this is human-caused pollution over more than a decade. And it is, I mean, for the folks that live in the Indian River Lagoon, and are responsible and, you know, don't put fertilizer on their lawn, especially if they're waterfront, but anywhere, and that want to see legislation change so that developers have to be responsible and not put any refuse into the water. This has been going on for a long time. And these manatees in 21 and 22 that winter in that area literally had no seagrass to eat. And I remember watching a webinar in 2021 that Pat Rose, our executive director, led, and I just cried through the whole thing, because it was pictures of the almost over 1,000 manatees that had died of starvation. Because of us and our greed for waterfront property and for development that has so impacted our lovely manatees. So their choice during those winters was to either go out and brave the cold water and look for food somewhere else, or to stay in, stay warm, and starve. And they unfortunately chose to starve. So there is long been efforts to restore the seagrass in the Indian River Lagoon, and some areas have done better than others. It is, the seagrass is not just about manatees, it's a whole ecosystem that supports many different kinds of shellfish and fish and birds and all sorts of things. And it's not just manatees. So this is about making the Indian River Lagoon healthy as a seagrass ecosystem again, and that takes a lot of effort. And again, some areas have done better than others with their efforts and successes. So our research, let's turn to something a little bit more inspiring, and that is the research that we've been able to do. The research began in the 50s and 60s because researchers realized that they could identify manatees by the scars on their backs from the propellers and from the parts missing. Like this manatee in the picture is actually missing half of her tail. His tail, I'm sorry, that's Floyd. And you will see that rather crude drawing. That's where they started, and that's actually how they remain. We have Wayne Hartley, our lead researcher for Save the Manatee Club. He and Cora Burcham, his research associate, complete research every day of manatee season in Blue Springs State Park, and they are updating that scar chart and adding, new manatees that maybe haven't been named yet because they're unknown to us. It's a database that is shared across many other organizations and really led by FWC to make sure that, it gives us information about sort of travel patterns, migratory patterns, kind of where they go, how they use different bodies of water in different ways. Because the one thing about manatees, these are wild animals, and yes, we have some that are rehabilitated and have trackers, but it's for a very short amount of time in the grand scheme of things, and it's really to make sure they're okay. And manatees aren't always visible, right? If you have dark water with vegetation in it, you have no idea which manatee that is. So we have the benefit of a crystal clear spring to give us a lot of information. Again, of over 1,000 manatees that winter in Blue Spring. So this, again, this is a ton of people. The USGS, FWC, zoos, aquariums, Save the Manatee Club. I mean, the list is huge. The genealogies go back to about the early 70s. And I think on our website, Megan, you can tell me, but Wayne Hartley, who has been a ranger in the past at Blue Springs State Park, put together the genealogies of many of our manatees at Blue Spring, and it's always the female. Again, as I explained that mating herd, we have no idea who the dads are, so we don't track anything that way, but we certainly know who the moms are. And so it's fascinating to read, and Wayne put together this terrific genealogy of the Blue Spring females that is really cool. So more about rescue and rehabilitation. So Save the Manatee Club is the financial partner and part of the Manatee Rescue and Rehabilitation Partnership that we call the MRP. This includes, again, government agencies, many zoos across the country, which are fantastic. For those of you in Ohio, Columbus Zoo and the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Gardens is incredibly generous with helping to raise orphan calf manatees. We have aquariums here in Florida. We have museums, Save the Manatee Club. I mean, it is a huge partnership of many, many organizations that all work together to rescue, rehabilitate, and release those healthy manatees. So whether it's after injuries from a boat strike or a propeller strike or entanglement, or they're sick, or when the calves are orphaned. So depending on how old the calf is, if they haven't been taught to forage, and especially if it's the summer, they are quite frequently, if their mother dies, like say from a boat strike, they cannot survive without her. And there may not, if it's in the summer, there won't be other manatees around. So that is usually when we have to rescue those orphan calves, because there's not other females that can take on that calf. That really only happens during aggregations in the winter. So one of the things that happens is that when a manatee is deemed releasable by the Fish and Wildlife Service, they are fitted with a tracking device. And the most important thing that you know is that we shouldn't ever interfere with that tracking device at all. And I'll get into it more. It does not hurt that manatee. It does not inhibit its movements whatsoever. It is there so that we can make sure that wild manatee is acclimating back to being a wild manatee. So as you see in the first sentence, if a manatee is deemed non-releasable, they go to usually aquariums and they serve as ambassadors for the species. At Homosassa State Park, the Ellie Schiller preserve has many manatees that most of which were too damaged by injuries from us to live in the wild. But each of the aquariums that participate in the MRP, I believe, have some kind of resident manatee that was deemed non-releasable. And so you can go see those, and that's for their own safety. It's because they cannot be out in the wild. Okay, so let's talk about how you can help. And I know I'm running long, so I'm going to speed through some of these. So in case you can't tell, I love manatees and I love talking about them. So when you're boating, and that picture just puts fear into my heart. It's like an icy hand. So wear polarized sunglasses, have somebody on the front of the boat looking out for manatee sign when they use those giant engines that they have. It's called their tail. Underwater, it makes sort of a flat, large lily pad shape on the surface, and that's absolutely a sign of a manatee. Have someone looking out for that, and also slow down and follow the speed zones. If there's a no-go area, don't go in it. When it's slow, you have to go slow, and idle is slow. I'm going to tell you, it's not a joyride, it's slow, like you're going with the current. And please don't ever try to attract a manatee to your boat. A lot of people will have that freshwater line off the back, and right next to it is that giant propeller. So the last thing we want to do is have manatees going up to the back of a boat expecting to have something good happen. Also ropes. Having ropes hanging off on your dock or boat is really bad. A lot of those ropes are nylon, and so it can fill up a manatee with microplastics that they don't even realize. It's just, to them, it's something in the water. They might think it's a vine. They don't know, and start inspecting it. So we have to be really careful about ropes as well. And then when you're paddling in a kayak or paddleboard, this is a passive observation. I will tell you, it's fantastic to see manatees. You should be paddles out of the water, sitting very still. Don't try to approach, and have your GoPro out, have your camera, and don't try to touch the manatee, and just take great pictures from above. So this is another picture that I'm sure will get quite a reaction from folks. So manatees are federally protected. So the things in this picture are illegal, and are also just not good for a manatee. Anything that we do to habituate a manatee to humans is not in the manatee's best interest. And that's the best way I can state it. We shouldn't be feeding or giving them water. They do not need our help with water at all. Even in the Indian River Lagoon, it's still absolutely illegal for a private citizen to try to feed a manatee. First of all, you don't know what you're doing, and that will not help a manatee. And throwing a bunch of butter lettuce into salt water is going to do nothing except make a sludgy mess. So please don't do that. No touching, chasing, certainly no riding. These behaviors, all of these things can cause a mother and calf to be startled and go in different directions. And depending on the age of the calf, they may not be able to find each other. And so we've had exactly these situations happen where calves have been orphaned because they literally got separated by a whole bunch of people trying to have an experience of their lifetime that, you know, harmed a wild animal. So, you know, we frequently will see in the springs that the manatees may move away from people and into cold water or areas where there's actually more boat traffic. And so again, we have to realize that our actions have consequences. And then also take, you know, responsible photos and post things on social media that are appropriate. Very famously, probably 10 years ago, 2 young people jumped on a manatee that was in the surf on the east coast of Florida and posted it. Geez, I mean, this is a long time ago, so it was probably Facebook back when it was new, or like MySpace or something. And they were riding a manatee, and they actually interrupted a mating herd. And manatees were going every different direction. They climbed onto the back of the manatee and posted it, and they actually both were prosecuted. So they were quite bold about showing their faces and where they were, and yes, they were arrested. So yeah, the best thing we can do for manatees is watch them from afar, donate money to organizations, if I don't say so myself, and encourage other people to treat these wild animals like wild animals. So you can help. You can notify FWC if you see an injured animal. Unfortunately, if you see a dead manatee, that would be horrific. Also, if you see a tagged manatee, you see one with one of those tags, or you see a calf by itself, and I want you to err on the side of, I'm not sure what I'm seeing, so I'm going to call anyway. Don't think, well, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not going to call. Manatees need you to be their voice. So pick up the phone, pick up your cell phone and call. Use your VHF channel 16 if you're on a marine radio. You can also email or text. So take those numbers down, store them in your phone. You can also report a speeding violation. You do have to get a picture of the boat identification number, which is usually on the front. And it has to be on both sides. So you can get a picture of that. You can also submit that for that person to be mailed a speeding ticket. And then when you're in a boat, and many of us are boaters, I don't want y'all to think I'm anti-boater, because I'm really not, but I am pro slow boating when there's manatees in the area. So we will provide many free resources. So when you go on to savethemanatee.org/free materials, or look for resources, you can see we have that boating banner right there that kayaker is holding up. Right in the, I don't know if y'all can see, but in the front, there's a gorgeous manatee coming up to breathe. And so she is doing the very responsible thing, paddle out of the water, because you don't know what you're touching when you're paddling. So she paddles out, and she's warning everybody else to go slow because there's manatees below. You can also have over here on the left, that's a waterway card that's laminated, and also a boat sticker, so that you have these things with you, whether you're in a kayak or in a motorized boat as well. And then the trash, please, please, please. So there's a saying about state parks and national parks: take only pictures, leave only footprints. That includes your trash and debris. Please use the trash receptacles. Again, I pick out several pounds of people's trash from what is a beautiful natural place every shift that I'm there. So sometimes we know not what we do when we're not being mindful. So just be mindful. You know, I personally have gone straw-free for manatees for many years. because I just don't agree with single-use plastics like that, unless it's like a paper straw, and that's probably pretty fine. Use reusable items, and then the fishing line is the big one, is recycling your fishing line, just being aware of where it goes, where it is, and you're not just unspooling into the water and then cutting it because it's a pain. That could actually kill a manatee. And donate your time. And this is where I get super jazzed, because that's me in the picture. And that is me with a lovely group of our volunteer manatee mates. And we are at a festival. So we would love for you to donate your time. So if you go on to savethemanatee.org/volunteer, you'll see all kinds of opportunities for you to volunteer your time. Most of the time volunteering, you need to be in Florida, or at least take maybe an extended vacation or live here part of the year. And it would include all of those things listed there. But we do have a manatee outreach ambassador program. And really that's to, for you to, like, say you're on vacation in Houston or Galveston, and you see manatees and there aren't signs anywhere warning people about how to act. There's in and out. That would be a great time for you to contact us. Give us information about what it is, where it is, all of that, and then we can reach out to that location to see if they will put up our manatee signs on their dock. And if you live in waterways in Florida that have manatees and you would like to put a sign on your private dock, please go onto our website, savethemanatee.org/education or resources, and you will see we have metal dock signs. So, but back to donating your time. So we would love for you to join our volunteer manatee team. And then also social medias is a really big deal. So obviously, you being on social media, supporting SMC and promoting good behaviors. And then also, there's a terrific outlet for y'all. So if you're ever having one of those days in your job or your life, and you feel like your blood pressure is really high, go on to manateetv.org. This is amazing. So it is our live camera views. And so because it's now manatee season is over, at Blue Spring, we have the above water camera. And then, but at Homosassa State Park, we actually have underwater and above water, because there are resident manatees that are on camera all the time in the summer. And that's really exciting. And I am not a medical professional, but in my most unmedical professional opinion, watching manatees swim by, do barrel rolls, look at the camera with those lovely faces, I for sure know it lowers my blood pressure and it just takes away some of the stresses of the day. I actually have it as a screensaver. So it absolutely just relaxes me and makes me know, okay, things are right with the world, because I can see manatees doing barrel rolls underwater. So the other thing in that section of our website is you can join our email action alert team. And that is usually about contacting policymakers in Florida about issues relating to manatees. Obviously, protecting habitat from development is a big hot topic right now. Restoring our Florida springs is another one. And then strengthening the Endangered Species Act. As you may know, manatees were inappropriately changed to threatened. And we've already started the legal process to get them back into the actual endangered classification. Of course, they're still protected. They were never not protected. But your help with that is greatly appreciated. You'll receive emails occasionally about actions you can take, like signing petitions and pledges, writing to publications. And then this QR code, it should be working right now, is actually a manatee sighting network that we started, I think, about 18 months ago here at Save the Manatee Club. And this is for you when you just see a manatee. I don't want you to confuse this with an injured or orphaned manatee. That call is always to FWC, always immediately. They coordinate all of the rescue efforts for the Manatee Rescue and Rehabilitation Partnership, the MRP. So that goes to FWC. This is about healthy. This is about sightings, simply put. So you can use that QR code. You can go onto our website. You can do it from your phone when you're out and about. If you're like boating or whatever, you can do a sighting form. And that gives our researchers information about the manatees. If you can get a good picture of the scar patterns, that certainly helps, because that is how we identify them. But it also tells us when we have manatees in areas that we've never heard of before. So we would like to think that we're everywhere, but we certainly are not a Save the Manatee Club. We run lean and mean as an organization. So there are manatees moving into areas that we have no idea. But if you do a sighting form, then we'll know. And then we can look at, do we need to do anything to support and protect manatees that are moving into that area? And my favorite is going fertilizer free for manatees. So I didn't get into it heavily, but in the Indian River Lagoon, there is a massive problem with a ton of chemicals going into the ocean. And most of those are coming from lawn herbicides and fertilizers. And while your fertilizer company may tell you that it's all natural, well, there's lots of things that are natural that I wouldn't put in my body. And that's what we're doing when we fertilize our lawns in Florida, because everything that we put into our lawn goes right down into the aquifer and the water table, and it all ends up in our water. So it is absolutely vital that we make this commitment and take the pledge and stop fertilizing our lawns. This is not just waterfront folks, y'all, it is everybody. Also, and I didn't get into it before, but just to mention now, if you have a septic tank, please make sure that, especially if it was built in the 50s and 60s, that you have updated that thing, because that is leaching right into the water table as well. So, but this is about fertilizer. So you'll conserve water by irrigating only when necessary. And you can learn more about native Florida landscaping. I am going to be taking a webinar next week that is going to teach me, hopefully, about how to work with my HOA and going native Florida landscaping, because many HOAs have rules against not watering and not having a luscious green lawn. So this is a pledge that we would love for y'all to take. The biggest thing that I see landscaping companies do is they put a lot of grass clippings into the stormwater drains, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do. Those are there for storm water and not for all the debris and stuff that and the grasses. That is not where they go. And so we do have these signs available. If you take the pledge online, you can actually order your own fertilizer free for manatee sign, which will be fun. And then, of course, you can adopt a manatee. That QR code will work. Will take you right to our website, to the adoption page. For those of you that have adopted manatees over the decades, we really appreciate you. What I find really amazing about this program is that it allows us, as just normal human beings, to connect with a federally protected wild animal, and that animal we have history with. So these are all real manatees that have been researched. We know their histories. We know the first times they were seen. We know about them. The females, we know what calves they've had. Some of them, we know who their moms are. It is just an amazing way to connect with a wild animal. When you adopt this way, you can, there's different levels of donation amounts. And the different amounts actually get you different swag. And so we appreciate your generosity always for each and every adoption. Yeah, it's terrific. So let's see here. Oh, questions. And I think we have a whole bunch, and I will come back on camera. Hello.
We do. All right. Thank you, Gina. I'm just reading through the questions. We have about 5 or 6 of them. I responded to some already in the chat. So if you asked a question and I haven't answered it in the chat, we'll try to talk about it here. Feel free to ask any other questions as we go along. So the first one, I'm just going to go in chronological order because that seems like the easiest way to go. So the first question was from Rhonda, who wonders, how long can manatees be out in cold water looking for food? I guess it depends on the temperature.
It does. It does. Also depends on takeaway. So I think we fixed my microphone issue, but now I'm hearing myself. Are you hearing me twice?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So I'll just ignore myself echoing. So it depends on the size of the manatee. I have seen females leave calves in spring, go into rivers for several hours. If they're very smart, then that they will go during the hottest part of the day and try to eat off the surface. Obviously, and
so Gina, apparently they're saying there is, Gina, there is an echo that people are hearing.
Oh, there is. Oh, there is. Okay. I don't know why that's happening. I don't know how to fix it. Okay. Okay. Still happening. So Megan, you may need to answer the questions. I don't know why this wasn't throughout, right?
Mm-mm. Yeah, no one is speaking. Nobody should be allowed to unmute themselves except me and Gina. So,
right.
If I mute myself, I'll continue my thought before I mute myself. Why don't you continue with that, like answering that question briefly, and then we'll see.
Yeah. All right. So is that better, y'all? Yes, that was the echo. Okay. So I have seen manatees go out into the river for several hours. Again, they're quite smart. They may eat off the surface. And it all depends on the temperature of the water they're going into. There were times at Blue Spring where the St. Johns River was in the low 50s. And I will tell you, many adult manatees chose to skip that day of eating because that is wicked cold and they did not want to go out there. And manatees can go without food. I don't want yes, it would be great if they had 10% of their body weight every day, but that is optimum. And especially if they're in a warm water refuge and they're resting, it takes a lot of energy to go out into that cold water. And so when we had the St. John's really cold, not this past year, but the year before, many adult manatees skipped a day or two of eating and waiting for the water to warm up, and they would go out. But the females that have calves don't have that luxury. So they would go out. None of them got cold stress. They know what they're doing. These animals are not new. They have figured it out, and they will not take the calves out there. They treat the spring as a nursery, and it's really fascinating. The calves will cross nerves and all of that. So the manatees know those vibrissae on their body tell them what's happening with the temperature. And I believe it tells them like, okay, I've had enough to eat. I'm going back in and I'm warming up, and then I'll come out later.
Excellent. We'll see. Can I talk? Can I speak without echoing? We'll see. The second question, Rhonda's second question, has there ever been, or is there now, a volunteer patrol to control speeding boats?
I do not believe there is one. I have offered my services to FWC several times. I would love to be a private citizen handing out boat speeding tickets. I will tell you, I don't believe that exists because FWC is law enforcement. So I don't know if there's a way to have like a citizen auxiliary like there is with some, sheriff departments for FWC to hand out speeding tickets. Because I've tried to do it in my kayak with that yellow sign, And I'll tell you, I've been called every name in the book by passing boaters. If they slow down to call me a name, at least they slowed down. So there you go.
Yeah, I think another way, all of that is definitely true. I think another way to make an impact is if you do see a speeding boat, you can report it. You can call and say, or if you happen to be in an area that you notice is a particular problem area, where you frequently see boats going too fast, or maybe you feel maybe there was a manatee, there was a no wake sign that has fallen down or it's too faded. All of those things are ways for us, even though we can't right now actually do that kind of enforcement. We can let law enforcement know that this stuff is happening in certain places, and ask them to please do something about it.
Right.
And to up patrols in that area.
Yeah.
That's right. So another question related to boating. Do threats to manatees from boat strikes increase noticeably during tourist seasons, or are the boaters/boat rental companies as conscientious of protecting manatees as locals?
And Megan, you'll have to mute. So we don't know that data. What we are aware of is that there are reports that the FWC provides about manatee injuries, manatee deaths in specific areas from boaters. I would tell you that before we did our first phase of marina outreach, we did that in December in Mosquito Lagoon, which is part of the Indian River Lagoon. And when I went into that outreach thinking that this was all about tourists renting boats, and I found that is actually not accurate. I think it's the difference between boaters that follow the speed limits because they care about manatees and the environment, and boaters that don't care. And I don't think it has to do with tourists or residents. I think it just has simply to do with those human beings. Some of them just don't want to follow the speed laws. I mean, it's just like people on the highway. I mean, there's some people that just don't follow laws. And, I think we need much more severe law enforcement on the water. And that's just my opinion, because I think there are areas that are not patrolled as heavily as they should be.
Great. Oh, what's the next question? The next question is, I can answer this one. So this is from Jeanette. She wants to know, is there a worry about power plants closing, such as TECO, and loss of habitat? So that is a very valid concern. So I think we discussed the need for manatees to stay in warm water habitat, and power plants like TECO and others around the state do provide warm water effluent. So they generate their power, and a byproduct of that power is warm water that then they release into the waters around them. That water has been, and manatees have adapted to use those sites in a similar way that they would go to our natural springs for warmth. So yes, that's absolutely a consideration. And it is a kind of balancing act between knowing that we need to be transitioning to clean sources of energy, while also really trying to ensure that these manatees, that there are other options for them, be that a different way of generating warm water in that area for a period of time, be it working on trying to transition them to using other kind of historically used warm water sites. So it definitely is an issue that we are thinking about. I know that Save the Manatee Club for years and years ago sort of started that conversation about how do we transition manatees off of these power plants. And I think that there are still haven't quite figured out exactly what the solution is, but we are working to identify what that is and try to, really do the right thing both for the Earth and for the manatee population that has come to depend on those. I don't know, Gina, if you want to add anything else to that. Okay. Let's see. So one question, Marissa had a question about the sargassum, the seaweed clump. So for those of you who may not have heard about this, there is a very, very, very large, I'm not sure exactly how large it is, but it is a mass of a type of seaweed. It's called sargassum. If any of you have happened to go to the coast of Mexico, like if you went to Cancun or Tulum or anywhere in between, and in the past maybe 5 years, you saw a lot of sargassum there, that seaweed that washes up, that's what it is. So there is a huge island of it floating around in the Gulf of Mexico, and it is heading to Florida. And sargassum it's a type of algae clump. And the interesting and sort of gross part about this clump of algae is that it is comprised of some living algae, but also some decomposing, like rotten algae, and other organisms sort of living in it. So it's very much a not fantastic thing that is out there. We have gotten a couple of questions about how that may impact manatees, or whether the manatees, we have 5 minutes in the meeting, it says, or whether manatees may eat the algae. The answer is that we don't know 100% how a manatee who may encounter this mass will interact with it. We do know that this type of algae is not a common food source for them. They're not really known to eat it. So it seems unlikely that it's going to become a food source. And also because it is decaying, it's really they're gonna avoid those parts for sure. And they may, another concern is that in the same way as the harmful algal blooms that we discussed earlier, and red tide will block the light from hitting the seagrass so it can photosynthesize. If this algae floats in the same place for a long period of time, it could impact the seagrass that's growing below it. So there are a lot of questions, but that's basically what we know for now, and we'll be kind of keeping an eye on what to do about that. Oh, let's see. Okay. Let's go with, if a manatee is unable to return to the wild, is there a special rehabilitation center for them to stay at? So the answer is yes. There are many. Some of the primary ones, obviously, we have manatees in our adoption program, Ariel and Betsy at Homosassa Springs Wildlife State Park. There are permanent resident manatees, or there are unreleasable manatees currently in several of the Manatee Rescue and Rehabilitation Partnership facilities. So SeaWorld, Mote Marine Aquarium, Zoo Tampa, the Miami Seaquarium, the Columbus Zoo, they all are hosting manatees that thus far are unreleasable. But for the MRP facilities in particular, their goal is always, always, always to rehabilitate and return them to the wild.
Right.
So that is always what they try to do. And that is so, one, the manatees can go back where they belong and be wild and free. And also because, especially with the unusual mortality event, the need for critical care space for severely malnourished or injured manatees is very, very high. So they always need space to be able to take in the most needy manatees, so that they can be cared for as well. So short answer is yes, they exist. But the goal hopefully is always to send them back into the wild, where they came from. We have 2 minutes before this is gonna end. It's gonna probably just cut out. So hopefully we have gotten through most of the questions. I think there was one, I'm just gonna go really quickly. There was a couple questions about the adoption program that I'm trying to find. Oh, Emily has a fun question. Are there any manatees that need more adoption donations than others? That makes sense. It does make sense. So the funds from the Adopted Manatee Program, they all come together into the same group of funding. So we try not to make a competition about them, though we will say that some manatees are definitely more popular than others for whatever reason. So for example, Gina herself is very fond of Mushu. If you're familiar with Mushu. So they all of the funds go to the same place, but I would say if you are looking for a particularly cute manatee who doesn't get a lot of love all the time, you might look at Deep Dent. You might look at I think some of the older male manatees get a little less love than the females who tend to have calves and they look cute. So I would look in that sort of direction, but really any adoption, any manatee is great.
Yep. Every adoption is fantastic.
Yes. And so I think we have a minute left. We're probably going to lose all of you. So I think it's probably best if we go ahead and wrap up. Gina, do you want to say anything before we conclude? I'll mute myself.
Sure. So thank you, everyone. It's been my distinct pleasure to talk about manatees with you and to celebrate Manatee Appreciation Day with Megan and with all of you. So thank you very much for your support.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We're going to be posting this. We'll post it up on our website. We'll share it on our social media if you want to come back and watch it some other time. Thank you to Deb and Altamont for suggesting that we do a Manatee 101. If you have any other ideas or suggestions for webinars you want to see or want us to talk about, please feel free to contact us on our social media. You can email Gina at education@savethemanatee.org and ask. So please feel free to reach out to us at any time. And thank you all so much for joining us.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.